Hello everybody and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to be checking out the alpha version of something called 404Sight by developer Retro Yeti Games as a group of 12 students in the Masters in Entertainment, Arts, and Engineering program at the University of Utah. It is a first-person platformer with a sort of a parkour Mirror's Edge style influence to it, and it's got some cool visuals done in Unreal Engine 4, and I took it for a little bit of a spin, thought it was worth reporting on, and let's get right into it. So we've got an options menu, pretty bare bones at this point, since this is an alpha. Again, keep that in mind. A lot of the features that I'm hoping to see if this does get progressively, worked on further in. I definitely want to see some, resolution options, window option, all of that sort of thing. It only has 3 levels in this preview version, so, not a lot to report on yet. But that's okay, because it's pretty fun. Let's give it a try. So there's our controls, standard stuff. Move is WASD, reset levels R, switch to third person is O, jump is spacebar, and then we've got usability on left mouse or revert on right mouse, or we could use the 360 controller. In this case, I'm actually going to stick with the mouse and keyboard, just because first-person games, especially when you're trying to move in a dexterous way, tend to move or control a little bit better, in my opinion. So it's not super difficult to get a handle on, except they face you to the wall for some reason as we start here. So we're a parkour runner, running through these maze-type scenarios, and this whole game has a bit of a political bent to it, which I don't want to spend a lot of time on. I mean, I definitely agree with the sentiment, and this game is sort of in favor of net neutrality, and sort of is represented by these fast and slow lanes that we'll run into, and we're sort of, absorbing the slow lanes later on. But as much as that's part of it, I feel like at the same time, it doesn't really, add or really, for that matter, detract much from the game. It's just sort of an extra added little bit that's on there. What I'm really focused on is the feeling of movement and the way that the conventions work, and of course the graphics and sound. In this case, there's not a whole lot of sound. Mostly just got the running and jump animation, sound rather, when we hit those jump pads, and that would be a death right there. For whatever reason, I just didn't jump. Oh, we didn't remove the slow lane, that's why. So what happens here is the ISPs, represented by that monolithic structure at the top there, it's launching little missiles down onto our heads, and we've got to block those by hitting right-click, and otherwise we won't be able to get the momentum necessary to make it through to the next jump pad. So, in that way, that's kind of where that metaphor with the political statement kind of comes together, and it is, of course, a timed game. I would definitely want to see some leaderboards or something as we get further in, but right now it's, satisfying enough just to progress through the environments and see if you can try and beat your own times, I suppose. Oh, I don't know where I was supposed to jump there. I kind of messed that one up. For the most part, the level design has felt fairly intuitive. That was one of the first times I've had trouble getting through an area, and I actually didn't make a checkpoint there, so we have to start over. No biggie, the levels are fairly short. I think all of them can be beaten in roughly a minute or slightly under a minute. But there is enough diversity to them. It seems like we spend time, traversing through a variety of different buildings. We've got some more well, I don't want to say necessarily interior areas, although I guess that's what this is, although I think I just clipped through it, sorry. Geometry's maybe got a little bit of a thing going on, but, alpha, that's the way things go. But yeah, we spend a lot of time up in the air. It seems to be a very pervasive element with these jump pads. Now all of a sudden they're not connecting to each other, and I think that's the one thing I observed happening a little bit more than I'd like in my reasonably trivial amount of play that I've had so far. I feel like a lot of the time, you have so much momentum that when you hit one of these jump pads, you actually fly further than you're intended to go, and I don't know if that's necessarily just something that is because it's an alpha, that maybe they're still kind of working out the kinks there, trying to find the right spacing for everything, or if there's another element, maybe I'm just not controlling the game properly, which could also very well be correct. I'm not claiming to be an expert at this. The other thing is, I kind of wonder sometimes about whether or not this entire having to reveal the arrows thing is even maybe just superfluous. What if the arrows were just there all the time? Would it really take away much from the game, not having the ability to left or right click on things, maybe just removing the negative arrows as you run? Because, it's not hard to keep momentum up as long as you know where you're going. And I guess the real challenge is, okay, can I map my way through all of these levels fast enough to see what's ahead of me and be able to adjust accordingly? Also, I don't know what that sprite is that keeps appearing in front of my eyes. Maybe that's one of the slow lanes. But yeah, once you know the level design, and it happens very quickly, honestly, because you play, these little segments over and over again in just a short amount of time, you don't really need to reveal them anymore. Also, the level design kind of is structured to show you where the jump pads are going to be anyway. So, you know, why even have them there? Just run over everything and just try and do your best to gauge the map and gauge the jump distances. And that'll actually help you out a lot, because then you're not going to be surprised by the jump pads and then find yourself in a position where all of a sudden you fall because maybe you'd run up a little bit too far too fast before you reach the jump pad. I know whatever I'm doing right now, by the way, is not how you're supposed to beat the level, so sorry about that. But I really think that's actually, like, a real thing. Like, that not having the fact that I need to reveal all these arrows would mean that I'd actually be able to better gauge the distances that I have between jumps, and I think the game would just be more satisfying to play for it. But maybe I haven't seen the full vision yet, because, you know, honestly, I'm kind of nitpicking a little bit more than even I should, because this game is super not finished, and I'm aware of that, and also, it's not actually that bad now anyway. I'm just sort of looking for things to criticize, and really, that's one of the ones that stands out, and I have to question, of course, the main gameplay concept occasionally, because, well, that's how we come up with different permutations on things, and I feel it's generally valid to do. Anyway, oh, what was that path? I just sort of took a little side road to get to nowhere there. I guess we'll go this way. I imagine there's also a few different paths through each level, and if I remember, the third one, the one I'm playing on right now, is actually the most enjoyable out of the three. Okay, whatever I just did there is not fast mode. There we go. Also, at times, when you ping the level, the arrows can go away just a little bit faster than you expect them to, which will kind of leave you out in the lurch, not really having anything to land on, and then you'll end up falling. Which, again, is not a huge deal, because you're going to learn the level design pretty quickly. But I imagine if the general premise or the intent of the developers was for you to be able to sight read, and I realized I didn't right-click there, if you were to sight read this whole thing, and maybe if you only had one life to play through the whole game or something, I would imagine these things would be a lot less intuitive than would be desirable at this point. And I'm actually fine with the concept of just running and jumping over these platforms very quickly and having that just be the central thrust of the game without having to get into anything too complex. Because it's satisfying. Moving around through these sort of spaces is just fun, intrinsically. And especially if you were to add some extra movement options, you know, a double jump, a slide, a wall run, all of the usual stuff that we see in stuff like Mirror's Edge, and maybe these things are actually planned. I think you might just be able to get around the whole arrow thing, and maybe that's just what they want to differentiate themselves anyway, which is totally valid too. I'm just seeing what's fun, kind of strip away all of those concepts and just see, like, what's the core premise here, what's the thing that I'm resonating to the most, and what's here is not bad. I just feel like it's almost going out of its way to create extra layers on top of things that don't necessarily need to be there, you know? But that's 404Sight for you. I actually think it's pretty cool. I'm definitely going to be watching this further on as it gets developed more. This is kind of funny, actually. On the title screen here, we're still in the perspective of our first-person character. So if I rotate my viewpoint downward, you can actually see your legs, which you could see at any point. Oh, you know what? I should actually play level 1 again and switch over to third-person mode and see how that looks. Maybe this will be actually easier. The camera's kind of close to the model. I would probably put that a little bit further back, but then again, you get into trouble with camera clipping, then it's probably about as close as you could really get away with, or as far, rather, as you could get away with without having that turn up to be an issue. I also think this will probably matter a lot more with regard to ambience and atmosphere once the music starts coming into play. You know what? It's actually way easier to see what I'm doing from a third-person perspective. You know, not surprisingly, most likely. The ability to see a little bit outside of my general range of vision does give me a little bit of that info I was looking for before, as well as I can see more easily when I'm losing vision on the ground, which is kind of an important element that I mentioned a couple of times there. I wonder if maybe if the radius was further out, or like if maybe you could get power-ups that would allow the radius to become further out for certain sections, and then the game would sort of punish you for not finding the power-up that would allow you to see further on in a particularly complex spot. I don't know, would that be fun? It might be fun. I'm really hoping, too, that this game doesn't end up taking the route of so many other games that have tried this same thing and ends up making it like a combat stealth focus. I don't see that going to be where we're going here, because it's very much just strictly about platforming. Oh, man. I didn't have the arrow up. You can totally run around on the side of this building. But anyway, I've seen so many games go in that route of just making it all about combat. Even Mirror's Edge, to an effect, I really kind of preferred the run mode more than the fight mode, and I really kind of wish you could just mitigate any and all interactions with NPCs in that game. But, play to your strengths if you can, and I think the strength of this game is running and jumping and trying to quickly parse a path through a sometimes semi-complex, strange environment. I don't even know what you call this. It's like super sci-fi, urban cubism. I don't think that's a thing. But it's definitely more of a surreal environment than it is a city, although it definitely harkens to the concept of a city, or, I guess you could say it's more of like a virtual environment, if that's what we're going for, maybe a little bit Matrix-y, something like that. And I don't have any of the background information about, like, the story of why things are the way they are, but I am curious. I also like that this placeholder model sort of looks like a clay sculpture. So, yeah, there's some weird glitchy texture work and stuff going on here. Some texture seams, some Z-fighting, as it's actually called. I'm sure that stuff will get sorted out later on. Anyway, I think we're going to be done. That's 404Sight. If you want to check it out, there is a free build that you can try. I'm going to have the link for it, of course. The animations are pretty good, too. And give it a try. Give it a run through and see what you think about it. I'm definitely going to see, as the newer builds go up, when new levels are added, or if they're added, I'm going to see about, if any of those things that I mentioned end up changed or different. Kind of feels like we're doing like a little bit of a Sonic thing at times with all these jump pads, or maybe more of a Quake thing, because Quake is more known for the jump pads. See, why was I supposed to land on that? Sometimes they just sort of shoot you off into nowhere, and I'm not sure if it's because I just didn't line it up right, or if I had too much momentum, or what I did there. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like on it. That does help the series continue to proliferate and find about more and more indie games that hopefully you'll find are interesting and worth trying. So anyway, I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic night, everybody.